Thousands of homes and businesses from Florida to Georgia to Tennessee and the Carolinas have been damaged or even destroyed by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And between the hurricane-strength winds, tornadoes, storm surge, and catastrophic flooding, people are left trying to figure out if they can rebuild and exactly what their insurance will cover.
Right now, we talk to CEO of Insurance Information Institute, Sean Kevelighan. Sean, thanks so much for being with us. This is complicated, right? Especially for those that have been hit twice, right? What should people be doing, in the immediate aftermath of a hurricane to make sure that they are covered?
Well, obviously we first and foremost want to make sure people are safe. But once you've gotten back into your house or dwelling or the location of it, you want to make sure you begin to take some inventory of things, take pictures of the damage, make sure that you're calling your insurance professional just as soon as possible. These are important. The other thing you mentioned, if they in fact did get hit twice, those would be two separate claims. So that's important for people to consider and know. Want to make sure you look, if you can, at your policy. There's a declaration page that'll give you a one-page summary of really what your policy covers. If there's an extra deductible as it relates to a hurricane, sometimes those are there as well. So really, collecting just an inventory of what's happened to you and calling your industry professional is what I would consider your first two steps.
Sean, especially in the Appalachians, we saw the floods and the landslides, take land away. And some land areas where homes once stood, the land isn't even there anymore. So does insurance cover replacing the land where it once was, or do you have to rebuild your home somewhere else?
Well, it's a good question because land movement is typically not covered under a traditional homeowner's insurance policy. And then you also mentioned flood, and that is as well complicated. In our opinion, the flood insurance process here in the United States probably needs to have a second look insofar as we've got government running the majority of the market, whereas we think private insurance entering into the market might close that gap, because some of those areas that you're talking about from our analysis had flood insurance take-up rates of less than 1%. So you're going to have a lot of people without insurance coverage because of it being a flood event. And flood insurance in this country is right now more of a problem than it is a solution, unfortunately, because it's just more complicated to get. And so we would say with this discussion and this news cycle that we're seeing around Helene in particular, with it being a large flood event, that we should also reevaluate just how flood insurance works in the United States.
Sean, I was down in Tampa for Hurricane Milton. I was talking to some homeowners. They had storm surge flooding, right? And that would be covered by their flood insurance policy. But when the Milton came along, their second story had roof damage, and then they had rain intrusion on their second story. How do you separate those? Are both of those covered by a flood policy, or is one covered by your regular homeowner's insurance policy and the other's covered by flood?
I can't, specific to what you've said, you're talking, one, as we talked about, two different events that would require two different claims. One, as you mentioned, a surge would be a flooding event. So if you have flood insurance, you want to make sure that you're making that claim. The second one with the roof damage does sound like it was probably more of a wind-related event, which is covered in your traditional homeowner's insurance policy. So on those two separate claims, you're going to have two different types of insurance potentially to deal with. Now, that's where your insurance professional will come in and help you out and make sure that they're getting in as just as fast as possible to do what insurance does. Insurance acts as a financial first responder to get those economies back up and running after these devastating catastrophes come through.
Sean, you mentioned how few people have flood insurance in many areas, and I've got flood insurance, but that's despite the fact in multiple places where I've lived, my realtor or my insurance agent gave me bad advice. He told me I didn't need it. And so I know the flood insurance program has challenges, but how can we get the professionals that people are in touch with, whether it's their insurance agent or their realtor or some other professional, to stop telling them that they don't need flood insurance? I think that happens too often.
Well, I think in cases you are correct, and in fact at III, what we've done, National Realtors Association, we partnered up with last year to write a handbook for them, so that any realtor can now provide them with an insurance handbook about questions to ask. Because in our opinion, in the property purchasing process, the idea of insurance and risk management probably enters into the play entirely too late. It's when you're getting a mortgage. Sometimes people, if they're paying cash for a home, don't even think about it until after they have the home. So making sure that you're understanding your risks is very important. And so we do at III have tools. We encourage people to think about that risk, think about insurance before you make your decisions, but on the other side of it, it's a complicated system. Getting two policies is complicated. It has to happen, but it needs to be discussed in terms of ways we can change that flood insurance system.
Yeah, and the whole point here is to be covered in case of financial burden. Sean Kevelighan, CEO, Insurance Information Institute, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.